What fact blows your mind every time? You can hear the difference between hot and cold water while it is pouring. The symbol for division, a grave, is just a blank fraction with dots replacing the numbers. I learned this about a week ago and I'm still wondering how I never noticed. When it's so quiet you can hear snow falling, you're actually hearing the static discharge of the snowflake hitting the ground. It gathers the electricity while it's falling to earth. The sound made by the Krakatoa volcanic eruption in 1883 was so loud it ruptured eardrums of people 40 miles away, traveled around the world 4 times, and was clearly heard 3,000 miles away. That's like you standing in New York and hearing a sound from San Francisco. People who are born deaf and happen to be schizophrenic have some weird experiences. Someone born deaf, that has never been able to hear, uses sign language as their actual language, not a representative language, like the sign for water just is water, not the sign for water. When these people are schizophrenic and hear voices, they actually see disembodied hands floating in midair signing to them. That the pillars of creation, of which the first Hubble pictures were taken in 1995, hasn't existed in 6,000 years. When they first measured Everest it was a bizarrely round number, so they added a few fake inches so people would be more likely to believe them. Orcas are natural predators of moose. When moose swim between islands in Alaska, the orcas eat them. The sun is 400 times wider than the moon, but also 400 times as far away, so they appear to be the same size in our sky. Genghis Khan and his Mongolian empire would kill so many people he caused an actual drop in CO2 levels and lands were scorched and forests replaced them. Naked mole rats just don't get cancer. Yes, like Rufus from Kim Possible. They live exceptionally long for a rodent, like 30 ducking years, at least partially because they never naturally develop cancer, and it's a reach to give them cancer in a lab. We like to think of cancer as a family of diseases and that it's naive to anticipate a singular cure for all cancer. But Mother Nature figured it out, and she wasted it on these ugly subterranean ducks. Nature 499, 346 or 349, the 18th of July 2013, doi 10.1038 Nature 12234. From the time it was discovered, 1930, to the time it was declassified as a planet, 2006, Pluto didn't complete even one revolution around the sun. If you or a loved one has been diagnosed with mesothelioma, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Edit. Oh boy, first gold. Thanks, stranger. The T-Rex lived closer in time to us than it did to the Stegosaurus. Millions of years is an extremely hard thing to grasp with my incredibly mortal mind. The modern-day BBC series of Sherlock did not have to change Dr. John Watson's backstory of him being a former army medic injured in Afghanistan. This was originally stated way back in 1887 with a study in Scarlet. Cheetahs don't roar, they meow, like house cats. If Bill Gates were to live to 90 he could spend $8 million a day for the rest of his life and still have over $1 billion at the time of his death. Edit. It turns out he makes just over $4 billion a year in interest. Blue eyes are younger than pottery. All planets in the solar system fit between the Earth and the Moon. The Sun does not. You never actually listen to your true voice because of bone conduction. When you speak, you hear your own voice through the vibrations inside your skull set off by your vocal cords. According to the BBC, those vibrations travel up through your bony skull and again set the eardrum vibrating. However, as they travel through the bone they spread out and lower in pitch, giving you a false sense of bass. Then when you hear a recording of your voice, it sounds distinctly higher. That's why it always sounds like it when you listen to your recorded voice. Also, you have a false image of yourself in your mind because you are used to seeing a mirrored image of yourself. That's why you always prefer to flip your selfie. Some phones apps have this turned on by default, so basically your mind doesn't even know itself. Cleopatra began her reign 2086 years ago. The youngest of the 3 pyramids at Giza was finished 2,441 years before she ascended the throne. That if Bill Gates donated all his money equally to everyone on earth could buy a 12-pack of cola and a bag of Doritos. Edit. Woke up to 53 messages in my inbox. Still nothing compared to the higher ones though. Somewhere in pi is my phone number, and your phone number. That California's population is more than my entire country, Canada. Babies don't have kneecaps. Spent like 10 minutes examining daughter's knees. No kneecap. We didn't really know what a hurricane looked like until the 1960s. I don't know about blowing my mind every time, but I read that last week and it struck me how far we've come in a short time. Edit. Just for clarification, I did indeed mean what it looks like from a satellite imagery perspective. I believe that I read that in a BBC News article last week. I'll try and run it down today, but given when satellite technology developed, it makes sense. Edit 2. Geez. Late to my own party. Thank you. Work. Anyway, I tried to run down the exact article I read that in, and couldn't. But I did look up way more than I ever thought I would about hurricane observation. The first flight into the eye of a hurricane was during the 1943 Surprise Hurricane. An American and British crew flew into the eye to show it could be done. The hurricane is known as the Surprise Hurricane because it took so long to relay information between various branches of the government, due to the secrecy demands of the Second World War, that there was almost no warning before the hurricane made landfall. The first broadcast of a hurricane tracked by radar came in early September 1961, when a young and unknown Dan Rather took a crew into a weather station to film and broadcast the radar image of a hurricane. This seemed to have changed the public's perspective on just how big these storms could get. Finally, later in that same September, Hurricane Esther became the first satellite discovered by satellite imagery. That Oxford University was around before the Aztecs. Infinite does not mean all-inclusive. There are an infinite amount of numbers between 3 and 4, but none of those are 5. That cumulus clouds weigh 1.1 million pounds. Old, but still crazy that much water is floating above us at times. There are real people behind Reddit accounts. If we had a minute's silence for every person killed during the Second World War, both military and civilian, we would be in silence for roughly 112 years. France was still executing people by guillotine when Star Wars was released. That Niagara Falls has stopped flowing twice in recorded history naturally. That much water just stops. Lobsters live forever if nothing kills them. They don't age. There's other things too that don't age, but they are simpler organisms. Lobsters are reasonably complex. It sounds simple, but the implications of this are immense. There is a genetic combination where it is possible to regenerate cells indefinitely and live forever under the right conditions. Medical technology is nowhere near this right now, but the fact that it exists on Earth under laws of nature means immortality is not sci-fi. It is simply a matter of technology which can be achieved at some point in the future. It's like finding a cricket that can jump back and forth through time and no one noticed this whole time. It's proof it's possible. The sheer size of the universe. We are used to having a set reference of distances. Cosmic distances just throw everything out of the picture and make it hard to grasp just how big or far everything is. Sharks are older than trees. There are more Subway restaurants in the world than McDonald's. A pan of brownies is really just one big brownie. In a room of 23 people, there is a 50% chance 2 people share the same birthday. With 70 people, the probability is 99.9%. Fire forms a sphere in zero gravity. If there is a 1 in X chance of something happening, in X attempts, for large numbers over 50 or so, the likelihood of it happening is about 63%. 1-1-1/X. X. For example, if there's a 1 in 10,000 chance of getting hit by a meteor, or if you go outside 10,000 times, you have a 63% chance of getting hit with a meteor at some point. If there's a 1 in a million chance of winning the lottery and you buy $1 million, random, Lottery tickets. You have a 63% chance of winning. Credit to you Theligus. The Library of Babel. It's a project online that aims to contain every combination of all of the 1,312,000 characters, lowercase, commas, spaces etc. It would contain every book that ever has been written, and every book that ever could be, including every play, every song, every scientific paper, every legal decision, every constitution, every piece of scripture, and so on. At present it contains all possible pages of 3,200 characters, about 10 circumflex 4,677 books. Edit. People asking about the storage and how it's possible. This is from the forums on the site from the creator. Thankfully, a day the entire site only takes up a few MBs or nothing more than the code which contains the pseudo-random number generating algorithm that can produce all 104,677 or so books. Double quote. The fact that we aren't even interested in a giant rock 250,000 miles away anymore. Edit. Thanks for the gold. The US made approximately 500,000 Purple Heart medals in anticipation for the number of casualties in the planned invasion of Japan. In 2003, 120,000 of those medals had yet to be handed out. In 58 years, there hadn't been as many wounded as there were expected in one invasion. Nothing ever touches. That's ducked. The 2% margin of error the Chinese government allows when they take their census is larger than the population of Australia. Russia is bigger than Pluto. The same math that makes it almost impossible for us to be alone in the universe also makes it almost impossible we'll meet any other beings. Dinosaurs lived on Earth for thousands of years before flowering plants made their first appearance. That if Wayne Gretzky never scored a goal, he would still be the all-time leader in career points scored. Donald J. Trump is the President of the United States of America. My thoughts are just a giant blink blob with some chemicals and electricity. If you cut a hole in a net, it will have less holes. That there are millions of people around the world who would trade places with me in an instant. Just learned this one yesterday, that in 1947 in Texas City, Texas, there was a ship fire that was so hot, the seawater was boiling. When the ship finally exploded, it created a 15-foot wave detectable 100 miles away, leveled 1,000 buildings, knocked 2 planes out of the sky, was felt in Louisiana 250 miles away, had a 2-ton anchor blown 1.62 miles inland. A second 5-ton anchor blown half a mile inland. Exploded a second ship which sent a propeller nearly a mile inland. Destroyed a seaport. Obliterated 362 freight cars. Left 2,000 people homeless. Tons of other damage. People killed. And resulted in the first class action lawsuit against the United States government. Humans share 50% DNA with bananas. So we're basically half bananas. When you dream, one part of your brain is making up the story, and another part is experiencing those events and is genuinely surprised by all the twists in the plot. That the world's population has more than doubled in just the last 50 years. How the most recent Mars lander landed. Basically, once it reached orbit, the ship dropped the lander, it freefell for a while, then released a parachute. The Mars atmosphere is much thinner than Earth's, so it was still going at 10 miles an hour. At this point, it releases the parachute and ignites rockets to stop its fall. At just a few meters above the surface it hovers. Then it lowers the lander about the size of a minivan down on cables until it rests on the surface. At this point the bolts holding the cables to the lander explode, and the rockets fly off and crash land safely away from the lander. The lander starts its mission. Everyone's facts sound so cool, but I was going to say that when you snap it's your finger hitting the palm of your hand making that noise. If I fail to procreate I will be the first of my ancestors' direct ancestors not to do so since the beginning of life on Earth over a billion years ago. That I'm here, life itself, it's still mind-blowing to me. The idea of death. The idea of knowing that there is absolutely every possibility that there could be absolutely nothing afterwards. Everything we hold dear now, Be that friends, family etc will mean nothing. I really hope there is something. Nuclear power. The magnitude of nukes are insane. The Tsar bomber that was dropped in Russia caused a 5 magnitude earthquake whose waves traveled around the world 3 times, and it was detonated 4.2 kilometers above the surface. We have the power to cause devastation beyond imagine and natural disasters. Aliens exist, but, statistically, we'll most likely never meet them. I can go have an intelligent conversation with someone too young to remember 9/11. That when a woman is pregnant with a girl, she's also carrying the eggs of her grandchildren. Every time you look at the night sky you are looking at the past. You may be seeing light from a star that no longer exists. There exists unborn people that will live out a full life without ever seeing a smartphone or a computer. There are still human tribes that are unaware of the world beyond their village. There are millions of people that still follow Bronze Age religions. Slavery still exists. Look up Haitian child slave. PPL used to get surgery without painkillers and anesthesia. I have a vague grasp of the facts here and everyone is welcome to savage this with actual science. And I might delete this as it gets too embarrassing. But the understanding I have is that if we ever master space travel at the speed of light, or maybe even faster via black holes, and could create a super high powered telescope that could somehow transmit video instantly through a quantum computer system, if we installed it somewhere a few million light years away and pointed it back at the Earth, we could then watch live video of dinosaurs. It doesn't exactly blow my mind, but in 1955 there was a ridiculous accident during the 24-hour Le Mans race where a Rassicard flew through the stands at head level and decapitated like 80 people. If you take a standard pack of 52 playing cards and had one for each of the 52 ways they could be shuffled, they would fill the known universe. Today is the oldest you've ever been, and the youngest you'll ever be again. That caterpillars somehow turn into butterflies in their chrysalises. It's so cool every time I watch it happen. I'm always flabbergasted. On a scale from the Planck length to the size of the entire observable universe, the average human is closer to the latter. Mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. The time from the Declaration of Independence to fighting World War II is close to the amount of time from the colonization of America to the writing of Declaration of Independence. Edited it to say close to, not the same. The dinosaurs were in Earth for a longer period of time than they've been extinct. I've said a sentence that nobody in the whole world has ever said, ever. If the sun was the size of an average door, the Earth would be the size of a nickel. I can't hum while holding my nose. That we are 8 light minutes from the sun. It could explode and we wouldn't know for 8 minutes. 30% to 50% of all pregnancies end in a miscarriage. Moose are ducking huge. No. Much larger than my memory can retain. Fucking huge. That there are marine life fossils on top of Mount Everest. Edit. This is caused by natural effects from tectonic plate movement, not God. The Roman Empire rose and fell before anybody ever discovered Madagascar, and when they did, they came from the east, not west from Africa. They are still making Pirates of the Caribbean movies. There are more trees on Earth than stars in the Milky Way. There are approximately 360,000 babies born each day, but only 150,000 deaths. Earth will be gone in about 5 billion years and everything we are will be forgotten. Moving freight by rail is 4 times more fuel efficient than moving freight on the highway. Trains can't move a ton of freight over 470 miles on a single gallon of fuel. That Guinness is a light beer. Electricity and magnetism are basically opposite forms of the same force and scientific laws. If you fluctuate a magnetic field, it induces an electric current, and if you run a current through a conductor it will create a magnetic field. This one principle is the basis of all modern machinery and electronics, and was discovered by a man who could not read. Edit. Okay. Apparently Faraday could read. He was just not classically educated and was not very good at expressing math in a formulaic manner. Which is why James Clerk Maxwell compiled his research and derived mathematical formulas for his discoveries. This is why you Google before you gush, I guess. We are closer to 2030 than we are to 2000. The world's last woolly mammoths lived on an isolated Siberian island and died from genetic collapse around the same time the Egyptians were building pyramids. The last 3 times the Patriots started the season 0-1, they won the Super Bowl. There were no earthworms in North America until 1607.